What is going on, world? What's up, YouTube? It's Zero here. Today I'm bringing you guys a brand new episode of The 8 Below Show. Welcome everyone to 8 Below. Thanks for being here, guys, to the best entertainment related show here on YouTube. And I'm super excited about our episode here today. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's get into it. The Batman is one of the most anticipated movies, guys, or comic book movies, I should say, in recent times, and I think that we're all very excited about it. And I think that what really comes down to, though, even though we're excited to check out this newest, edition of the Batman franchise, I think there's still a lot of question marks here. That being Matt Reeves directing a big time, blockbuster comic book superhero, one of the most iconic superheroes at the very least. And then on top of that, Robert Pattinson playing as the Dark Knight. That's another big question mark as well. But all in all, regardless of all of the different question marks surrounding this movie, I think that I can probably say with confidence that most people are still going to check out this movie nonetheless. So I want to talk about, in this first segment of the show, where is the Batman at this point, guys? Kind of talk about, where it is. Is it going to be pushed back even further than its current release date? What is the status of it? And what could this, movie potentially be about? So let's talk about it. So guys, the Batman is slated for October 1st of 2021. It's been, pushed back, and it's possibly going to get pushed back once again due to the pandemic going on in our world. And look, 2021, that's still, you're going on 2 years away, but at the same time, this is a movie that I think, because of the scope of it and how big this, needs to be for Warner Brothers, I think that they want to make sure that there's plenty of time for marketing purposes, for just getting the movie finished and completely wrapped up. So October 1st, 2021 probably is a good idea that it was kind of pushed back to that point, simply because they'll have plenty of time when everything kind of goes back to some form of normalcy to kind of finish filming the movie, and then of course go into, post-production, and then of course marketing and things of that nature. So here's the thing though. Lots of movies have been pushed back. That's in 2020 as well as 2021, and we're probably going to start seeing that more and more movies are going to be pushed back for a number of reasons. Number one being, just that, are the movie theaters going to be allowed to bring, have, audiences? And if they do, are they going to be, are they going to be able to fill up the auditoriums, or are they going to be like half capacity, or are people going to have to be between one another? And we've talked about this ad nauseum at this point, guys. Lots of these movies that are going to be coming out may, suffer from, okay, we're going to only be able to sell half of an auditorium at one showing. So that's going to make the movie prices skyrocket, or at least the ticket prices skyrocket. And so a lot of people may not even want to go to the movies. And that might also force some of these movies that would normally be big blockbusters going to the movie theaters to go straight to streaming services, because it'll cut down on costs. They'll cut out the middleman, that being the movie theaters. And then, of course, the studios will be able to make that money in the subscribers and such, even though they may take heavy losses on that, at least at first. But that's, we'll kind of get into that later on in the show, guys. But I think with the Batman in particular, this movie certainly is still going to be coming out, guys. I know there's been a lot of delays here. Robert Pattinson is Batman. I have my doubts, but at the same time, he might surprise everyone. I mean, Ben Affleck, I think, playing as the Batman would have been really great. I think it would have been awesome to have a solo Batman based around Ben Affleck as the character. But Robert Pattinson, Matt Reeves, these two kind of working hand in hand. Matt Reeves, of course, guys, has done, movies like Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and, he's actually a really great director. So I'm excited to see what he does with this. But I think that, Robert Pattinson is probably my biggest question mark, if anything. And the story, most likely, guys, it sounds like, there's going to be like the Penguin, the Riddler. There's going to be a number of other villains in this movie, which I think is going to be really interesting. The Batmobile looks like something straight out of Cyberpunk 2077. And you've got, a number of the cast seems really great. Other than Robert Pattinson is the only one I'm kind of like got a big question mark about. But all in all, guys, I think people are really excited about this. But the question is I think this movie is definitely still going to come out most likely in 2021. But if it doesn't, it might get pushed, to 2022. Because look, they've already pushed it all the way to October of 2021. So that's pretty close to 2022. So, I'm hoping that they don't have to keep pushing it back. But I feel like if they have to keep doing that, they may not even release it in theaters. They may just have it go straight to a streaming service, which would be a very strange ordeal. Because I feel like some something like the Batman needs to be experienced in the theaters. But who knows, guys, with everything going on right now, things are changing rapidly. I mean, and that's something that's obviously happening at this point. But the Batman, guys, as to where it is right now, it's, put on somewhat of a hiatus, and I think that you got to kind of take the October 1st, 2021 release date at this point with a pinch of salt, just because I think there's a chance that Warner Brothers decides to push it back even further, depending on what happens, right? We're hoping that there's a vaccine that comes out at some point in 2021. I mean, even later in 2020 would be great, but it doesn't sound like that's going to be realistic. So if you go to 2021 and you get a vaccine, maybe things go back to some form of normalcy after all of this shapes up. But so much can happen, guys. I mean, we just don't know. So at the end of the day, I'm hoping that we get to experience the Batman in theaters with like a full audience, be able to experience it all together. But if not, I mean, they might just say, let's pull it from the release schedule. Let's release it on a streaming service and then kind of go from there. But it'll be interesting, to say the least, guys. And I would love to hear what you guys think in the comment section below about the Batman. Do you think they're going to be able to stick with the October 1st, 2021 release date, or you think it's going to get pushed back even further? And what are you most excited to see in the Batman? Let me know, like I said, in the comment section below. And for more The Batman content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. When I talked to my friends about Borderlands 3 and what their thoughts were on this addition to or continuation of the Borderlands franchise, and I kind of compare and contrast to what my experiences were with this game, a lot of it was, there were, a lot of questions that, it seemed like a lot of people, or a lot of at least my friends, had about, where the series seems to be going at this point. And I myself have concerns that this is a franchise that, if it continues to keep going, could it end up actually getting kind of stale because there's only so much that they can do? Well, in this segment of the show, guys, I want to talk about, will we see a Borderlands 4 at some point or another in the foreseeable future here, following the events of Borderlands 3. So guys, just so you know, this segment of the show is going to be filled with spoilers about Borderlands 3. So just a warning for all of you. And an article, guys, that was written by Alex Avard of Games Radar, the burning questions we still have about the Borderlands 3 ending after beating the main campaign. And what seems to be a habit for this series, the Borderlands 3 ending is proving to be a point of contention for many fans. It closes the books on this Pandora chapter while still leaving the path open for a number of unresolved story threads. Maybe for DLC or another pre-sequel style spin-off. Whatever happens in the future, though, there's a lot to work through with the Borderlands 3 ending. This should go really without saying, but this Borderlands 3 ending explanation analysis goes into full unfiltered spoilers for the entire game. So, number one, is Lilith really dead? Vault hunts rarely succeed without sacrifice, and the ultimate vault hunt in Borderlands 3 required a siren as powerful as Lilith to give up her own life to stop Pandora, the Great Vault being ripped apart by its moon Elpis, the Great Vault Key. It's not exactly clear how Lilith did this, but we see her fly towards Elpis and explode into some sort of iridium-fueled supernova of siren energy, brandish the moon with her Firehawk mark in the process. So, when this scene happened, guys, it's hard to say. I actually think that, she may make a return, but I think that she actually very well might be dead at this point. It's hard to say. Maybe we'll get further clarification as more DLCs come out and such, and maybe we'll get some closure here on that and some of these other questions. Number two is, what's next for the Crimson Raiders? With Lilith gone, Ava has essentially taken over as the new leader of the Crimson Raiders, and Pandora is safe. Well, as safe as it can be once again. So what happens now? During the post-credits, we see our heroes enjoying some well-earned downtime, with Hammerlock and Wainwright tying the knot. Tiny Tina and her adoptive parents Brick and Mordicia back to playing bunkers and badasses, and our Vault Hunters tucking into a hearty post-adventure meal at Dynasty Diner Avenger style. Meanwhile, with Ava studying to become a full-time Siren, I wouldn't be surprised if she's being poised by Gearbox as one of the next set of playable characters in a future installment, but it's unclear whether the days of vault hunting are behind us now that the Great Vault itself has been dealt with. For now, we're happy to give Pandora some peace and quiet, but this is the Borderlands, and a new threat will surely rear its ugly head soon enough. So, this is what I'm kind of talking about, guys, when I was saying, not that Borderlands is having kind of an identity crisis or anything of that sort. What I think one of the issues that I'm having with Borderlands is kind of, where is this series going to go? Like, it feels like, even though everything about the game, it's a beautiful world. I love some of the environments and the landscapes and all of those things. I even like the story, but sometimes it's kind of feeling like, where are they trying to go with this story? And it's kind of getting a little bit confusing for myself. And so I'm hoping that we get some clarification kind of moving forward. I hope we don't get like another pre-sequel or something. I hope it's kind of, whether it's through DLC or through Borderlands 4, we would start understanding a little bit more about where they're trying to go with this story. Now, what is going on with the Sirens? So Borderlands 3 makes some serious leaps and bounds when it comes to the lore of its Siren mythology. Going into the game, we knew that Sirens were woman-born and mystical powers that was somehow connected to Iridium, the mystical element left behind by an ancient alien race, and that there could only be 6 in existence at any one time. Borderlands 3 throws a spanner into all that, giving us a male Siren with Troy, suggesting that Siren powers can be both siphoned from the living and inherited from the dead, and that Sirens like Maya are capable of much more than just telekinesis, including the power of premonition. Not only that, but the deaths of Troy, Tyreen, Maya, and Lilith leaves a huge vacuum for at least 3 more Sirens to appear in the future, which makes the future of the Sirenverse as indeducible as ever. Tannis herself, an expert of all things Pandoran, is also now officially known as the Sirentologist, so hopefully she'll be able to explain more in the future. And I agree with that. I hope that she explains more, because that's the thing, guys. As they're killing off certain characters and you're kind of trying to introduce new ones, that's where things can get kind of confusing. Think of like a game like Assassin's Creed. We talk about Assassin's Creed on a number of occasions here on the YouTube channel, and it feels like I've thought about that franchise has had an identity crisis, because it felt like, you know, every couple of games you're playing as a different character, or almost every game sometimes, more recently than not, you're playing as a different character. And so when that happens, it's very much so, it gets just kind of difficult to, like, you start kind of connecting to a character, and then all of a sudden you're kind of, that's like the rug is like thrust with under you, because you get another character at some point that you start playing as in the next, a continuation of the game. So that's kind of, there's a good, obviously games need to kind of change the formula or change some of the characters and such, or they need to add new characters and kill some of those characters off. But at the end of the day, there's a good thing when it comes to some familiarity with some of these franchises, at least as far as a continuation goes. If you want to see that continuation happen in a major way, having some of those major characters is really important. And when you're consistently trying to introduce new characters, sometimes that can get a little bit confusing for the player. Now, where are the rest of the Vault Hunters? This strikes me as a particularly egregious omission on Gearbox's part, and one that I'm hoping future Borderlands 3 expansions can remedy. Seriously, where the hell are the likes of Axton Salvador, Athena Gordes, Loaderbot, and Fiona in Borderlands 3? Given that previous games have made a big effort to present former playable protagonists as major NPCs, the fact that only Zero, Maya, and Aurelia show up in person throughout the main story with passing Easter egg nods for Timothy, Sasha, Gage, and Krieg strikes me as odd. Granted, Borderlands has an exceptionally large roster of heroes, so not every character can be included as a natural part of the story, but given the fate of the universe is at stake, you'd expect some of these guys to at least make an appearance of sorts. My hope is that Gearbox is merely saving some of its familiar faces for Borderlands 3. So, look, at the end of the day, I agree with this. I mean, because you kind of wonder, like, where are some of these characters from the other games? And they're not in this one. That's what I'm getting at here, guys, is like, when you look at some of these games and you look at the landscape of other video games out there. When you start going away from the formula, not necessarily like the gameplay and the mechanics and such, but when you start going away from, the familiar parts of some of the previous entries and you start getting into, kind of uncharted territory with some of these new characters, that's where you can sometimes start losing some of the fan base. So I hope that they kind of explain these things, whether it's in DLC or in Borderlands 4. Now, what about those tales and pre-sequel cliffhangers? Another lingering question for many longtime Borderlands fans, the fact that neither the Watcher's divine intervention at the end of the pre-sequel, nor the opening of the vault by Rise and Fiona and Tales from the Borderlands were addressed in Borderlands 3 also strikes me as irregular. The former game made a big deal out of the Watcher, an emissary for the Iridians, who prophesied the onset of the Calipolsis years before they landed on Pandora's shores, but this seemingly omniscient entity is mentioned only in passing again during the events, the Commander Lilith DLC. So, look, Borderlands 3, yes, did have some cliffhangers in certain areas. And look, I'm not the biggest fan of Borderlands. Like, I think it's I love the way that the world looks, and I love some of the characters, and I like what they're trying to do overall. But I'm not one, like one of the biggest fans of Borderlands, like who understands all the lore and such behind this franchise. But what I will tell you, with what I know, guys, as far as from my personal experience with playing, there are a lot of things that just don't seem answered at this point. Now, look, maybe they're like, we're going to be making a lot more of these games, and we're going to continue, giving you guys more and more to kind of take in as far as the Borderlands franchise is concerned and the lore that we're trying to build here. Now, the problem is with that is, once again, when you start kind of, introducing some new things, that being like characters and such, sometimes you can lose some of the fan base. And I think the things, for me at least, that I really feel needs to happen in Borderlands moving forward is not only having a single player story, having having a multiplayer, having co-op modes, having more ways you can connect with the franchise would really help. Now, obviously, their way in which they're trying to make this a bigger and better franchise is by having, as a looter shooter, having more and more, different kinds of guns and variants and things of that nature that you can craft within the world, which I think is great and that's awesome, but I think you need more than that to really keep people interested. You have to have a great story. You've got to have, really, likable characters. You've got to have all those, different ways you can connect with the franchise and the different, obviously different variants of guns and such. All those things are very important. But at the end of the day, I think it comes down to a lot more than just having, a lot of different gun variants. I think it comes down to having, multiple co-op modes, having multiple multiplayer modes, having a single player story that starts to kind of go full circle where you start understanding things a little better. That's what I think needs to happen. I hope Gearbox ends up doing that. But at the end of the day, to answer the question, will we see a Borderlands 4? I think that we will, guys. I do think that there might be, it might be a little bit until we see a Borderlands 4. I think it will be, at least a number of years until we start hearing word of a Borderlands 4, and I'll be sure to keep you guys all up to speed as further information comes out. But I ask myself, how can there not be another Borderlands game with all of the different question marks here? Sure, if there's going to be some DLC, maybe that'll answer some of the questions, but a full-blown continuation of the franchise is going to be the best way to explain some of the things, some of those questions that we might have as fans, and continue moving the series in the right direction. But like I said, guys, let me know in the comment section below, what do you guys want to see in Borderlands 4? Where do you want to see this franchise go? Let me know what you guys think, and for more Borderlands 4 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. A series that has gone on since 2009, guys, that has had games pretty consistently throughout the course of its history is Angry Birds. But I want to talk about, what happened here with Angry Birds, because this used to be a very popular series as far as from a video game perspective, and now, of course, they're coming out with movies and such for Angry Birds. But I want to talk about kind of what happened to the video games of Angry Birds, and, what was it that maybe had them, peak at one point, and then, of course, where was the decline, and where could it be going in the future? So let's talk about it. According to Wikipedia, guys, I want to go through kind of the release timeline here. We had, of course, games basically every single year, and this is where this got really interesting, in my opinion, was in 2009, of course, we had Angry Birds, the very first one. First game of the series, people absolutely loved it. Then you have the second one in 2010, which was Seasons, and then, of course, in 2011, You had Angry Birds Rio, and then we had 3 games essentially that came out in the span of a few months. That being Angry Birds Friends, Angry Birds Space, and Angry Birds Star Wars. All of which are all in the puzzle genre. And this is where it was kind of, where we kind of stayed until 2013, or I should say later 2013, until we got into the racing side of things, that being Angry Birds Go. And so I think, obviously, Angry Birds, for the longest time, guys, this is a puzzle-based, this should be in the puzzle-based genre. That's what this is all meant to be. Now, of course, they kind of started to expand this into racing and role-playing and a side-scrolling shooter, a tile-matching role-playing game. And look, there's nothing wrong with that. But basically, we were having games essentially every single year. Sometimes you were having 2 to 3 games a year that were coming out. And so, in my opinion, there was just so much oversaturation in the Angry Birds franchise. And so we got to, of course, more recently than anything, you had, June of 2017 and August of 2017, you had Angry Birds Evolution and Angry Birds Match. And then in 2019, so a couple years after that, is when we got our, most recent additions, that being the 17th game in the series and the 18th game in the series, Angry Birds Dream Blast and Angry Birds VR AR Isle of Pigs, which was a puzzle game, but it was VR and AR. And so what I'm getting at here, guys, is that Angry Birds has kind of changed over time. It was a puzzle game, and then it became a racing game, and then it kind of almost had some kind of identity crisis throughout the course of its history. Not that it was, really hurting the series, but if you look at all of the canceled games within the Angry Birds franchise, you have a number of them, guys. You had an Angry Birds, which was canceled in 2016, and then another Angry Birds football game, which was a puzzle, which was in December 2016, was canceled. And then, of course, you had a number of these that were unreleased, and some were released. So you had Angry Birds Ace Fighter, Angry Birds Holiday. These were all released, but then they were canceled later that year. And so what I'm getting at here, guys, is that some of these just did not work whatsoever. And the most recent one was in February 2018, was not even released, called Angry Birds Heroes, a role-playing game. And so what I think at the end of the day happened here with Angry Birds is oversaturation. I mean, we're talking just game after the game was coming out. And sure, great concepts at first, had really, it was a really fun game, guys, without a doubt. I enjoyed playing it myself. But there comes a point where you're playing these games and it almost becomes overkill in a number of ways. I mean, when you have so many games that you're trying to keep up with, and when you're talking a game that's on the iOS or on Android or, wherever you're playing the game, it can become very overwhelming. And they, of course, did take care of, they obviously had a lot of success because they made movies out of these. They've been able to continue making more and more games. But I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of oversaturation in my personal opinion. But let me know, guys, what do you guys think about Angry Birds, and what do you guys think happened here with this franchise, and where do you think it's going moving forward? Because for myself, I don't know where they're going with this. In all the possibilities that you could really think of, I feel that they're going to continue making these games. I mean, why wouldn't they? If they're successful, they're continuing to make them. They want to continue evolving this franchise over time. That being the movie side as well as the video game side. Why would they ever stop making these games? But the question is, though, is kind of more so, what do you guys think happened to it? Because it seemed like it was doing great, and then all of a sudden, some of these games, it's just not really what this franchise was really meant to be. But I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And for more Angry Birds content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. The question I'm going to present, guys, here at the last segment of the show is something that may seem like an obvious question or an obvious answer to this question, but I want to kind of dive into it a little bit because it's been one that people have asked me, and it's been a question I've been actually asking myself as well. So let's talk about it. So guys, without further ado, Is streaming the future? And when we talk about streaming, we're going to talk specifically about the movie going experience, or I should say just, the movie industry as a whole. I mean, we could talk all day about, Twitch, and we could talk about, Mixer and YouTube gaming and all of those, the streaming wars within gaming. And really quick, guys, those are obviously certainly the future. I think it's going to, those are going to evolve over time because they're still relatively new. But when we talk about streaming services like that of Netflix, that of Quibi or Peacock, or, just HBO, Max, and all of these different streaming services that are coming out or that are already out at this point, I think this really begs the question of, is streaming the future from a movie experience? That meaning, are movie theaters going to shut down here in the foreseeable future, and everything is going to be based on streaming services? Now, give you guys some context here. Obviously, a company like Netflix doesn't really have any of their movies go to theaters. They're basically just releasing them directly onto their streaming platform. Every once in a while, they'll have a movie. Most recently being The Irishman, directed by Martin Scorsese, that went to limited theater so it could potentially get nominated for Oscars or Academy Awards. And so they did that, and that was kind of more of they wanted to make a prestige move almost. They wanted to put a movie in theater so that they had an opportunity at getting the spotlight as far as getting a movie that got nominated. And so they did, though. And so it did get nominated, but all in all, you'll see most of their movies just go directly onto their, onto their streaming platform. And so you wonder to yourself, well, why? How does it work that the streaming services, are they actually making money if they're spending all this money on content and then they just put it onto a streaming platform and not putting them in theaters first? Are they really making that much money? And here, at the end of the day, Netflix, guys, is making a ton of money off of their subscriber base. Now, other streaming platforms that are just starting out or have, been beginning to build somewhat of a subscriber base, they might not be there yet. So take, for example, let's take Peacock, which of course, which I think is a terrible name, by the way, guys, for a streaming platform, but that's neither here nor there. But let's just take Peacock, and let's just say that this is they're kind of just beginning. They're just starting this streaming platform. And every movie that comes out, let's just say it goes directly onto Peacock from Universal. I think Universal is the ones who own Peacock, but let's just say all the Universal movies, so like Jurassic World, all those movies, Fast and Furious, go directly onto that streaming platform. It's going to build their subscriber base in a pretty major way, most likely, because people are going to want to watch those movies, especially if they eliminated theaters. The positives are that they don't have to you don't have to split revenues with a movie theater chain or a third party, or get give a percentage to the movie theaters. You can cut them completely out, and then you directly are putting them onto a streaming platform, which the movie theater industry doesn't really like that. They like the movie going experience, which I do as well. But from a business perspective, I think more and more of these companies, that being studios, are going to decide to start putting these movies directly onto streaming services because it cuts out the theater experience, and then they can just build their subscriber base from there. Look at Disney Plus, look at obviously Netflix. They are building huge subscriber bases, and some of those movies are just going to go directly onto the streaming services. Now, do I think it's happening overnight? Absolutely not. I think, but gradually we are going to see more and more movies and content that are going to be going on these streaming platforms, and the subscriber counts are going to get bigger and bigger over time. And I think that when you look at the grand landscape of streaming services, it kind of begs the question, why would movie studios want to put their movie in theaters, even though they make money from it? They're splitting those revenues, and they can be spending a good amount onto the movie theaters in order to put their movies in the theaters. So why not they just put those onto the streaming platforms, their movies on the streaming platforms, where they don't even have to worry about paying the movie theaters, and then they can, even at first there might be losses. There might be losses for these movie theater companies where the subscriber counts don't equal that of the revenues that are coming or the amount of money that it costs to make these movies at first. But over time, we just see what's happening, of course, with, Netflix. They're spending billions of dollars on content, and what's ending up happening is there's so much content that's out there on Netflix now, whether you're talking shows, movies, whatever it might be, that it's just helping build their brand more and more over time, and it's justifying them putting, putting so much money into making the content. So I think that, a lot of people think that the movie theater or movie studios are just going to, they're not going to make much money if they go directly onto a streaming platform. I think that's very far from the truth. I think right now they would have losses if they, let's just say Universal decides we're going to put Jurassic World Dominion and we're going to put Fast and Furious 9 directly onto Peacock. Sure, those movies probably at first are going to, they're going to have losses there because their subscriber count isn't going to be big enough as of yet. But over time, in the next 5-10 years, I think that they might have a nice sized subscriber count where if they were to put one of those movies on there, they're going to have a lot of people watching, as well as, they can make money off of ad revenue because you can have ads that run on these websites or these streaming services. There's just a number of pros for the studios from a business perspective versus that of just putting movies into theaters and splitting it. Even though the movie theater experience, there's nothing like it, it's just one of those things that I feel there's a possibility that this really is the future, guys. I mean, we all know that it's the future in a number of ways, but is it the future in the movie theater experience? Are we going to no longer have, movie theaters? I think movie theaters will always be around, but I think that they're going to have to evolve with time because I think that the studios are going to decide to start putting their projects and movies on their streaming platforms. Disney Plus is another one. They're talking about, the possibility of putting some of their big blockbuster movies just directly onto Disney Plus. And, obviously you put something like Black Widow, or you put a pretty big movie, a blockbuster movie that you would think, people would, go be flocking to the theaters to watch. You put it onto a streaming service and boom, you're going to have a lot more subscribers. You're also just going to have a lot of people who are current subscribers stay as subscribers because they want to catch all of that content as it comes out. But it's hard to say, guys. I think this is a big time question. That's why I want to kind of pass it on to all of you. Do you think that the future is streaming? As in, from the perspective that movie theaters are going to be going the way of the dinosaur. They're going to go extinct, essentially, from the major studios who are from them putting their main movies and their big blockbuster movies directly on to streaming platforms. I think it's a big question, guys, and I want to pass it on to you. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. And for more entertainment, content, and videos, stay here with Zero TV. And with that being said, everyone, I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of the 8 Below Show. And if you guys did, leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, stay positive, and as always, I'll talk to you guys all in the next one. Peace.